Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of the Ebon Show. Today's is a special one because I know as a channel dedicated to Classic and Classic Plus, y'all have been wondering when the next Classic episode would be. And we have a special guest. This is a new creator who started to carry on the legacy of Classic and Classic Plus while everyone else has been quitting and doing other ventures and other things. We've got my man Aaron Amir, like Boromir. He is an amazing Classic Plus creator. He makes some amazing videos discussing old dungeons, raids, locations. Go ahead, introduce yourself. I already did an introduction for you, but you got anything you want to say about yourself?
Thanks. Yeah, no, I've loved Classic. I got into it in 2006. I think my first transaction goes back to. It's always been the version of the game that I've played the most. Um, Growing up playing private servers, and 2019 rolled around, kind of perfect time. COVID hit, and it was like, it's like the stars had aligned, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
the perfect opportunity. So yeah, I got into that, and then I've always been into like creative ventures. Watching videos from people like you and Tello and Kago and Solheim, and uh, I'm sure there's like a bunch of other people that I can't think of at the top of my head. But like, yeah, it's just I've always wanted to like make YouTube content and stream, and so I was like, I'm just gonna do it, and so I just started doing it like a month or so ago, and here we are.
And he's done an amazing job. I'm telling you all, you should check him out. There'll be a link to him in the description down below. At the end of the video, I'll do another shout out for him as well. So today's video, like I said, is about Classic Plus and the state of Classic, how people and content creators have left to go to other ventures, and just the overall community vibe of how people have been perceptive towards the Classic dev team, Blizzard as a whole, and just the identity of Classic and what kind of happened to it. So we're going to start with the very first topic of private servers and Classic Plus. Do you truly believe that based on what we've seen from private servers, for example, TWoW, 8 years of content, or Epoch, or Bronzebeard, Ascension, and all these other Classic Plus servers, that Blizzard in the 18 to 24 months can make a product that's comparable with the time and resources that they have?
Yeah, I think it's pretty possible. I think the idea that like Classic Plus progress started when SOD ended is a bit not true. Like it's definitely they started Classic Plus when like before SOD even launched, right? Because they would have had to create that content for SOD, and they're not going to waste content, right? They're going to trim out the shitty ideas and they're going to keep the good stuff, right? So I don't think they're going to keep like Nightmare Incursions, but they have the Scarlet Raid, they have Demonfall Canyon, um, they have Karazhan Crypts. So I think they're pretty like locked in knowing like, well, there's definitely been enough vocal people telling us like what's shit and what's good, right? And so I think that progress carried over on top of like what they would have been working on since. Um, I think it's definitely believable that we see a 2026, like that's a long ways away, right? Like an entire year of development with the team the size they are now. I find it hard to believe they won't release something, right? Because at the same time with a Classic Plus server, you can release it not bare bones, but you can release it saying, "Hey, this is Classic Plus with X amount of content," and then, building upon that. That's what Turtle did, right? Like it's not like they had everything right away.
But
And,
do
same
you
with old
think
school
the
RuneScape.
do you think the player base would be receptive to that? Because like in the recent Willy video, he literally said that people look at old school RuneScape as it is now and say it's amazing, but he played at the launch of old school RuneScape and it was a horrendous experience. And so, in that perspective, do you think the community will be as forgiving towards Blizzard as other companies or private servers have had that community forgiveness? Because they don't have the negative ill will that Blizzard did.
Yeah. I think they're in a tricky spot because they're never going to make everybody happy, right? Like everyone's got a different idea of Classic Plus. And I'll be honest, I think they could probably release a server and say this is the Classic Plus server with like a reduced amount of content at the beginning and people would still be hyped. Right? I think people want it so bad that they will play a version of it that's going to get updated over time. Because I think that's the big thing. Like, and that was the thing with SOD, right? It's like you lost players because there was an ending, right? And so people don't want to invest in something that has like an ending, especially the idea of Classic Plus, where you want this never ending version of the game. And so I think once people know they have that security of like this never ending, always updated server, they're going to be a lot more inclined to like dive into it, right? Um, so I think that's kind of my opinion on that situation.
No, I actually agree with you. For me, for example, at the beginning of SOD, as each phase of SOD progressed, there was less and less hype for it because I remember by Nomerigan, everybody was like, next phase is Scarlet. They're redoing Scarlet Monastery, Scarlet Enclave, something like that. It wasn't Scarlet Enclave at the time. And then we're getting Karazhan in phase 4. Because that's what they had teased at BlizzCon, if you remember correctly. And we got phase 3, and it was Sunken Temple. And I felt the community shift. It was like people were kind of tired of Nomerigan. Like nobody was really hyped for Noma, but they had teased it already ahead of time. So they were like, just gotta wait for the next phase.
Yeah.
And then it was Sunken Temple, and you felt that community shift, the positivity. Like there was trickles of negativity, and then it became overwhelming very, very fast, especially with Nightmare Incursions and everything else. People felt lied, gaslit, betrayed because they saw in their vision a redone Scarlet Monastery, Scarlet experience, and we got Sunken Temple, which is a dungeon nobody liked anyways. It was very much just a shitty, long, drawn out dungeon that was unfun for a lot of people. So I do think you're right that if they did outright from the beginning say, this is a forever going server, we're going to keep adding content, I think people would stay excited. Whereas with
Mhm.
SOD, we knew it was ending, but we just didn't know when it was ending. And going from Sunken Temple into all that other shit and knowing there was an ending, it truly like dipped the hype like very, very hard.
Yeah. Well, I think too, like it's a risky move to take dungeons that are historically unpopular
Mm-hmm.
and like you definitely want to rework those, but like making that the thing that you do at the end of the phase, right? Like Black Fathom, Nomergon, Sunken Temple, like that's a risky move, right? To force everyone to do this reworked version of a dungeon that typically people hate and don't want to run. So I think it's important that they did rework those things, but yeah, it was definitely a miss. And I think with phase 3, it was probably more of a miss to have nightmare incursions because you at the very start of it are souring the experience, right? So if you kick off the experience with like this really terrible feature that's like completely not the ethos of classic and you're the entire player base is like, "Oh, right, you're tarnishing the experience because everyone rocketed to 50. They got tons of gold. They got that crazy like I forget what it's called, but the gear set that you get, like that's a really good gear set for just being thrown at you for like a rep grind, right? Especially something that you can achieve that fast. So I think like that mixed with the fact that it was Sunken Temple, I think it would have been a more digestible thing if it was just Sunken Temple. But you're kind of starting off on a really shitty note, which isn't gonna really leave people desiring to do the whole phase.
So, on the topic of like phase 3 and what happened to SOD later on,
Mhm.
you look at something like TWoW, right? Which it's been around for a very long time, and the community has only very recently clamored around how amazing and top tier it is because we went from SOD. If you remember, before SOD's ending, TWoW was popular, but it was always limited in popularity. And then SOD's death made everybody go like, "Well, I don't want to play Anniversary, I don't want to play MOP, I don't want to play retail. So where can I go?" And TWoW exploded. It was already popular beforehand. Do you think if SOD had continued as is, TWoW would have grown as aggressively as it did, and Epoch would have gotten as hyped as it did? Or do you think there's a one-to-one correlation of everyone feeling let down by Blizzard and the private server scene effectively exploding overnight? I know the
Yeah,
overnight's like that's not true, but you get what I'm saying.
yeah. I mean, it's hard to tell, but like I think that definitely contributed to it, right? Like you have this server that's been constantly building and creating like the player's vision or like a big group of players' vision of what Classic Plus, should be. So you have this thing that's kind of like the Classic Plus beta ending as this other server is kind of reaching this peak of like enough content has been made to make it this unique experience that everyone wants to enjoy. Um, so I don't know because the thing with SOD is like it was kind of already hemorrhaging players near the end of it, right? You see the chart where it's like it goes up and then it goes down. Granted, that could be like due to um, less raiders because I'm sure at the first phase everyone had a level 25 alt where
Mm-hmm.
they ran multiple raids, so it was kind of an inflated number. But I'd say it definitely contributed to it. Um, but a private server is only going to hit like a certain threshold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nostalrius, Turtle, Epoch, they're going to get like, that certain amount of people who consistently play it, but they're going to miss that entire audience of like people who just don't want to play private servers, right? Um, I'd say yeah, like for a good chunk of people, but maybe not yes for everybody, right?
No, that's fair. Which then brings me on to the next step. Now, Sod did many things right. I did a lot wrong. But I want to talk about the private servers that are out right now and what you would describe as being the quote unquote real Classic Plus experience. Which private server, for example, TWoW or Bronzebeard or Epoch or any other server you've played, truly embodies what Classic Plus should be? You can even use SOD as well. I know
Yeah.
people say there's a mixture of things, but assuming you weren't picking a mixture and you had to just pick one as is, which one would you pick and why?
Yeah. I'd say probably Turtle WoW, just because it's had the like most amount of time to cook. I'd
Mm-hmm.
say something like Bronzebeard is like a classic remix. Um, just based off the fact that there's just they throw so much shit at you, right? You can get a mount super early on. The gameplay is a lot faster. There's just a lot more going on, and it doesn't capture that same slow progression as, say, like Turtle WoW or Classic WoW experience. I think Epoch, like it was a shame because Epoch had a really rough launch, and they lost a lot of players through Bronzebeard and that kind of acquisition. While Turtle WoW has had more of a steady increase in players over time. It hasn't been this like hype thing that came out and everyone wanted to play it right away. It kind of gained that traction over time. Um, and I think, at least for me, because I know everyone's got a different opinion on it, I think it captures the spirit of classic WoW the most. Um, I think out of all the servers that I've played, it's the only one that I've been like, this is like strangely similar to like what I think an organic classic plus that's moderated feels like the economy isn't messed up. The content is like actual unfinished content from the producer's notes, you know. um, it's just very in line with like the classic experience with minor tweaks with content added to fill out what should have been in the game at the beginning but they didn't have enough time to do. How about you? What do you think?
No, I actually agree with you. Now I played TWoW a long time ago for the first time. And I didn't really, because at the time it was around 2020, 2019. It was I was starting to pick up on Classic Plus. Like I wasn't like a super big Classic Plus advocate from the beginning because I never played vanilla, so I was like, Classic is fine as is. Yeah, hashtag no changes. I didn't really realize how bad I was until I was doing PvP and rank 14 grind with a shit ton of people because I was leading a PvP battleground. And it was around then that I first started looking at private servers for Classic Plus, and a lot of them were ass. Now, the only ones that were really creative were like role play servers like RP Heaven, or there was another one, I forget its name, where you could create and build anything. You could shift the land, put structures and buildings in. And that was when I first got a taste of what if they finished vanilla? And at the time, TWoW wasn't amazing. It had a lot of content, a lot of it, but it wasn't what it is now. And when I look at TWoW as it is right now, in my definition, it is the closest thing to Classic Plus solely because, like you said, it sticks to the original vision, and even the additions they do add in regard to the world and storytelling and lore is very clean and succinct and very fitting. I know a lot of people are like, all retail, bluehead people, this and that, the work story, Sylvanas, this. Like everyone like has a dislike for different reasons for retail. For me, it was the very, very poorly written story and the complete disregard for the identity of Azeroth and a lot of his characters. And TWoW's storytelling was phenomenal. And I know no one cares about the lore. Yes, I'm in the minority. I get it. I understand that all people care about is good raids, good dungeons, good stuff, endgame. But seeing what they did with the world, the respect they put on it, the content they developed, I felt like it was a very true experience. Except my issue here is, and this is controversial, maybe it's because of how many times I've leveled to 60, how many times I've leveled to max level at endgame. I'm slightly sick and tired of the journey because I can only do it so many times. And yes, while TWoW has a bunch of new content, I feel like TWoW is very focused on the journey. And for classic plus survival and longevity, I feel like TWoW is too slow and not as big a focus on the end game as what people would truly like in the modern day and age for the largest audience. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's kind of where I'm feeling and where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah. Well, I think like with a Classic Plus experience, like an authentic from Blizzard Classic Plus experience, you don't want to rush the players too quickly to Endgame
True.
because then you're going to fall into the same cycle that you're in now, right?
Hmm.
Um, and when it comes to like content, it's tough, right? Because you're building a game for a modern audience. It's a completely different demographic as it was in
Hmm.
2004, right? You're taking a bunch of people who used to play EverQuest and you're introducing them into a new game. That was 2004, right? But now you're taking people who have played this game and like solved it mathematically, and you're introducing changes to that and making an evergreen experience that is going to last, right? So it's this tough, you want to one make a meaningful experience for people so that when they're going through it to even get to end game, they don't feel that what you're explaining, right? Where it's like, fuck, I've leveled a character to 60 like 10 times. Like I just
Hmm.
don't care, right? So you want to have a bit of both, right? Where you're kind of leading people along with like new things, new changes, but you don't want to do it so fast where they get to end game because people they want to just
They're gonna
fucking get to end
rush. They're
game.
gonna
Yeah,
sprint as
exactly.
fast as humanly possible. I hate that about the
Right.
modern player base.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and you don't want like the negative press of like, oh, I rushed to endgame and now there's nothing to do. This sucks, right? And then you've just wasted this kind of golden opportunity because you haven't kind of structured it properly. So I think for like an actual go through, it's you want to have like a classic-esque progression in terms of speed, um, because I feel like you know, we've talked about this before, where it's like you kind of have to protect the player from themselves,
Absolutely.
right? Where it's like left to their own devices, they have potential to ruin the experience for themselves and then get
Hmm.
upset about it. So I think that's kind of what you have to do, right? And I think that's the charm of like original World of Warcraft was like they weren't making a game that for a certain audience. Like they were making a game that they loved based off of an IP that they loved. Um, and and so they had people enjoy that experience, right?
Hmm.
They weren't trying to appeal to this mass audience. And I think that's where a lot of companies fall short is they want to appeal to such a broad audience that they kind of neglect their core audience of the people who are just interested in the thing. You see it happen with like multiple games. I feel like retail it's happened with where they're like, well, we want to, make it easier for different players, right? But I think there's a lot of strength in like making a really good product and not bending the knee. And then just having people by word of mouth, the content, all these things join the game because they see how fun it is. Instead of trying to like go out and capture those players, just keep making the thing that everyone loves. And then you're going to attract people because people are going to say, hey, that looks cool. I want to play that. Right. So that's kind of what I think when it comes to, I mean, I went off on a bit of a tangent, but like,
No, it's
yeah, the
it's
leveling
no
experience being
very well
slow
put. I
is
actually
key.
agree with you. I forget who said the quote, but the quote was, uh, "Video game players will optimize the fun out of their experience, and you effectively have to stop them." And that is absolutely true for the classic community because I've said this before multiple times. I love the journey, but the journey has lost meaning with how the player base plays the game because I don't feel like, and again, I'm this is a thing of like a community driven issue of if I played with different people, hung around different people, whatever, I would feel a different way. But I don't feel like I can actually enjoy the leveling experience and leveling journey because if I am slow, I am behind, I am falling behind the curve. When you get to the max level, Black Lotus, gear farming, if you're not there fast enough, you're left with the dregs, the more casual, not sweaty people. So your dungeon experience is worse. It takes you 2 hours to clear a dungeon. It takes you 2 hours to get your pre-boss instead of 30 minutes or 45 minutes. You fall behind the curve of grinding for gold, for resources. When they're cheap at the beginning, they become expensive by the time you get there. The whole experience of the journey mattering, I think it needs to matter on Classic Plus, like you said. My worry is, will they be able to make a journey that truly matters without the resources of the player base that's playing it? Because keep in mind, something like TWoW has a much more journey focused and journey oriented community and player base. The end game scene, there's no like Warcraft logs and this and that. You have the guilds that clear content and the guilds that don't. kind of like old 2004 content, right? There was no like massive logs and websites where you were looking at who was passing and this and that. Your guild cleared it or they didn't. You learned from somebody that knew how to play, or you just played yourself and did randomly. And I feel like the issue is, can they truly recreate a 2004 experience when the 2004 experience was based on making a better EverQuest? Because
Yeah.
EverQuest was ass. People look at World of Warcraft Classic and say, this is so boring, slow, and grindy. In EverQuest, when you died, there was no graveyard. Somebody had to go to your body, grab it, drag your body back somewhere so somebody else could come and res you. Like, if you died
Mhm.
at the bottom of a lake, you stayed there. Somebody had to go
Oh,
and
buddy.
fish your body out of the lake. And then you
Yeah.
had to have somebody else res you, because not every class could even res.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. So like there's this EverQuest private server called
Mm-hmm.
Project 1999, right? And it's classic with the first two expansions, which were kind of looked at as like the golden era of EverQuest. Um, and I got into that like really hardcore,
Mm-hmm. I
like
see the hat, yeah.
I'm wearing the goddamn hat, right? Um, and it's really interesting to play that game because like you said, yeah, like people came from EverQuest and was like, this is like a baby's version of
Mm-hmm.
EverQuest when they play World of Warcraft, right? And speaking to like, do I think they could recreate that moment? Like, I'm just gonna flat out say no, right? Like, it's just you can't, right? And that's fine. It's just like you can't go back in time, and that's
Mm-hmm.
all right. It'd be like I don't know. I was explaining it to my friend today. It's like you have Starry Night by Van Gogh,
Mm-hmm.
right? This beautiful piece of art, and you have his paints, and you're a talented painter. You know how to paint, right? And these are game developers, and but you're not going to add things to this that are gonna be. You might add some fun additions that people will enjoy, but it won't be as good as the original,
Mm-hmm.
right? And when it comes to this idea of like going back in time, you can make things in the same kind of style, right? You could make a song that sounds like a song from the
Mm-hmm.
80s, but you don't have the same,
Mm-hmm.
it's not the same, right? And so when it comes to like the game development, it's just a different period in time, right? Like there weren't examples of how to do things right, right? The
Mm-hmm.
devs enjoyed EverQuest. They played D&D, they saw Ultima Online and thought, we've got this awesome fantasy IP with this expansive world that we're building, like let's turn it into an MMORPG, right? It was a novel thing, right? Social media wasn't a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was this unique, cool thing. Um, so given that there's just too much information out and too many games out and too many points of reference that are going to inspire people that are going to lead to the development of that game, right? Because you think of like the game developers now versus the game developers then, right? And it's just a different set of games and inspirations that they grew up playing and pull from. So I think you'll get some cool experiences and they'll be in the ethos of classic because you have the graphics, the art style, you have all these things that kind of like visually, say that this is a classic thing. But I have a really hard time believing that it's going to be this time capsule expansion from 2004. Um, and I don't think it necessarily needs to be either, if I'm going to be completely honest, right? Um, I think having something new and something different is cool. Um, as much as I personally would love for
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And that's what I think TWoW does really well is like this expansion of this old school mindset. I just I can recognize that I enjoy a niche of something, but the vast majority of people don't, right? Like I enjoy EverQuest. I enjoy a 2004 experience, but I know that that's not like a common thing, right? I know there's like a bunch of people our age who feel the same way, but at the end of the day, like a lot of those people are classic era Andes, right? And they're the no changes crowd. So you're caught in this, wanting to appeal to people like us who want that experience and, you know, at the end of the day, you want this to be a big thing, right? You want customers, you want to make money from it. Um, so I think Sod was maybe a bit too far, but at least it was this trying to find a middle ground between the two.
You made some great points, which brings up a very interesting topic I do want to talk about now: horizontal versus vertical progression, and how retail WoW gave up on horizontal a long time ago and went full vertical, Whereas old school RuneScape went so vertical that there is no so horizontal there is no vertical in it. An item that came out 8 years ago is still relevant and good now. Guild Wars 2, for example, fully horizontal. I'm still BIS from 2013. And the issue with Classic Plus here is, how long can they go horizontal before there's no more value to doing content or no more value to doing things, and it feels like there's no point to going to the new rate tier because it's 3% better than the old rate tier, for example. I just want to get your opinion on that.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good thought, because I have been thinking about that too, right? Like, you go so vertical that you're in the same boat that you're in retail, right? Where I think the big thing with retail is, like, in any expansion that comes out, is you've completely wiped out any of the progress that you've made, from the previous expansion. As soon as Burning Crusade came out, there was, questing and dungeon gear that was better than your raid gear, right? There's you see that with the seasons in retail too. It's like a hyper version of that idea of, like, well, shit, now it's like every 3-4 months or whatever, and you're completely being invalidated. So you can only go so vertical, right? Before things are just like, you're in phase 6 where it's like, okay, now, like, that stuff that I got in MC, my Drake Fang talisman, like, that doesn't even matter, right? It's like you've invalidated that. So you do have a certain amount of headspace before it's like, shit, we got to do something else. And so I think when it comes to structuring the game in a more horizontal way, you have to come up with alternate ways to play and alternate class fantasies, right? So whether that's a DPS paladin that's, more holy shock oriented, as an example, where you have to kind of, like, create new ways to play, where the game or the gear isn't necessarily, like, crazy amounts better, but it's different, right? It gives you different skills and it unlocks kind of a different style of play. Now it's a toss up, right? It's hard because you don't want to leave, like, these alternative ways to play your class at level 60, right? Because it's like, if I have to get to level 60 to get to phase 6 just to play the holy shock version of my paladin that I want to play, that's bad game design, right? So you're kind of having to, like, grow the tree outwards at the beginning so that your branches can extend outwards at the ending, right? Because if you're I'm relating this all to a tree. If you have a skinny tree at the beginning and then you want to grow outwards, that's not going to be a strong tree, right? So I think about that. So I do think horizontal is the way to go in a situation like this. Um, you can have some pretty small increases over time, but you don't want someone at level 60 phase 6 to be able to just absolutely mop the floor with someone who's got, like, phase 1 tier 1 gear, right? Because then you're just like, what's the point of level 60, because you feel like you're doing a whole nother leveling experience, but it's all itemized, right? It's not level based. So it's a tough call. It ruins PvP, right? You're gonna
Absolutely.
queue up, and yeah.
So
So
that does beg the question then of, like, hypothetically, let's say
mhm.
Classic Plus has been out 5 years. It drops 2027. It's now 2032. We've all been playing Classic Plus. We're on, let's say they do very slow phases. It's 6 months a rate tier. That's a very long time, but, like, for the sake of this conversation,
Yeah.
phase 1, and then you have 5 years, so that's effectively 10 phases. By phase 10, should phase 1 still be valid and usable after 5 years? Should Molten Core gear still be good gear by, let's say, phase 10 is uh, defense of the Dark Portal, where instead of going to Outland, we just shut the gate down to Illidan Counter Invade, and that's the whole raid, right? Should Molten Core gear be valid by phase 10? Or should there only be some pieces that are, like, equivalent to the worst pieces of phase 10? Like, at a certain point of the progression, if nobody feels like the gear is worth any major upgrades, will they even be giving a shit to do raiding, right? Like, would you be doing Mythic Plus in retail if all you got was a cosmetic? You get a new mount and a shiny title.
Yeah. I think the audience doesn't necessarily care about a cosmetic reward for that amount of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think it's a different, you want a shiny,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so whether that means, like, a system where certain pieces are valuable over time and gives you a reason to go back, because you're going to have people hitting, 60 over time. So you're going to want a reason for people to want to make those groups, right? So if everyone's in phase 10, tier 10 or whatever, and someone is level 60 and they can't find a group because it's just not valuable, then yeah, you're in that position where it's not fun, right? It's bad for new players and you're kind of like making this group, you know, this small group of people who've gone to that max level. It's you're kind of designing the game around that person. So I think whether it's like an upgrade system or something where maybe you get an item in a further raid that can upgrade an older piece of gear, right, to make it a little more relevant. Like, and I don't know what that looks like. I'm not a game designer by any means, but things like that, whether it's like an older gear gets more of an upgrade than a newer piece of gear. There's like a scaling system, but you kind of get into a bit of a slippery slope there. Um, but I think they should be within a certain percentage, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard juggling act because yeah, you want to cater to all types of your players who play the game, and you don't want anyone to just get destroyed, right? Or it's like, oh, you've got a piece of tier 1, you're not coming into our raid because you're not going to parse or whatever, right? So I think there is a world where I'm sure that could work out well. um but I mean, I would like to see in a game where my previous gear isn't completely invalidated. It shouldn't be on par by any means, but it shouldn't also be like a piece of shit,
No,
when you compare it to
no, I
the
get you.
two.
So like that, and see, that's the problem I've had because I've been thinking about this for quite some time because I've been talking Classic Plus since just before Solid launch, a couple months before that, and I've come to this weird conclusion of whether it's vertical or horizontal, it's gonna kill the game within 5 years regardless because the classic player base wants horizontal, but horizontal does not reward progression after a certain point. I'll use Guild Wars 2 as an example. It's always really fun to go back to Guild Wars 2. I haven't upgraded my gear in like 13, 12 years? Because 2013, 12 years. And every like 3 years, 2 years, I come back with a new expansion, a new DLC, and I play it. And I'll be like, oh, this has a slightly better effect or proc. I don't remember why I actually upgrade because when I come back, I'll look up a guide like, what is good now? And it's like, you want to get this new weapon or this, whatever. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And it's like, but does that feel good for an actual player that's been playing the game for 5, 6 years? I come back every 2, 3. I'm not a dedicated player. I'm not gonna sit here and
Mhm.
lie like Guild Wars 3, Guild Wars 2, amazing. I've been playing the whole time, 13 years nonstop. I haven't. So from a dedicated player's perspective, they don't want vertical because that's retail. That's every other MMO. That's whatever. And then you have actual horizontal games like League of Legends where there is no reward for your raiding or whatever because they don't have it. It's full competitive PvP. And the horizontal progression is your skill improves or gets worse. And the vertical progression is new champions, new items, changes to the seasonal structure. But that doesn't work in an MMO. So, as a player, remove yourself from being a content creator. What would you want from the progression system? 5 years in, do you really want, like, an honest opinion, yes or no? Would you want Molten Core gear to still be relevant by phase 10?
Yeah. Um, that's a tough one. I think by phase 10, like depending on what tier you're on, yeah, probably not, I guess, right? Like and that's the thing, and that's me
It's
saying
tough.
that
It's
based
very
off of
tough.
understanding that, like, okay, this you have to draw a line somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where I don't want the gear to be garbage, but at the same time, like you do have to have a natural progression of like, oh, I should probably have, some tier 2 to do the tier 4 stuff or whatever, right? Like I know like in TWoW, for example, like you couldn't go into Karazhan 40 with like tier 1. You'd probably get mopped,
Mm-hmm.
right? But at the same time, like tier 1 is useful in getting tier 2 and some tier 3 pieces, right? So I guess at the end of the day, there has to be some form of verticality, and that gear does have a function in making your player stronger to get to higher tiers, right? I mean, we're just speaking from like a raid standpoint, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for people who raiding is their thing, yeah, I guess You have to choose, right? It's
Mhm.
you can't have
Here's
both,
a
right?
hypothetical. Let's assume every new raid tier is a 25% increase, right? In the previous
Mhm.
tier, because you want to feel rewarded, but not so powerful that your gear is completely invalidated. So, Molten Core to Blackwing Lair shouldn't be, oh, and I got Blackwing Lair gear, Molten Core is completely invalid. A lot of Molten
Yeah,
Core gear should still be good in Blackwing Lair, but every Blackwing Lair piece should be a slight or, upgrade or a major upgrade. Then
for sure.
AQ40 should be, I'm just going to use, they shouldn't do this for launch for Classic Plus. They shouldn't have Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, AQ40, Nax. It should not be like that. They should still happen, but it should be like new raid, Molten Core, new raid, Blackwing Lair. But like ignoring that, by say phase 10, phase 10 is a 250% increase to phase 1 to Molten Core. Would you be okay with them essentially vaulting Molten Core from removing it from being a raid and lowering it to being a 10-man, like UBRS? So you now can run into Molten Core as a dungeon, still get the tier, and then that way you don't feel like you're compelled to do a raid. You have a 10-man raid you can do as a dungeon, essentially a 10-man dungeon, and then you jump from Molten Core to Blackwing Lair, and then they only leave like 3 or 4 raid tiers. So you're never super behind, and you can always like have relevant content. Would you be okay with that, or do you still think that's not really a classic experience? Because I'm trying to make horizontal progression work, but it's a hard thing. I'm not saying my idea is great. I'm just throwing an example out.
For sure. Yeah. Well, I think you kind of have to do something similar to that, right? You have to make the content doable for a wider audience of people, right? So whether that's way down the line, yet converting it into a 10 man or something like that, you know, it's like, what do people really want, right? Like knowing that you can't have it all, you have to make some form of compromise. So what's like an acceptable compromise in that situation? And I feel like something like that, I don't think that the tier 8 players or whatever tier we're at in this hypothetical are going to care too much because they're already so far gone it. But it is going to benefit like the tier 1 people who just got to 60 on an alt or something like that, or a new player, giving them the opportunity to still do that. Um, it's a tough thing, and this is why I think Classic Plus is like such a hard thing to nail down, right? And probably why they haven't been like super vocal aside from like some sod and some
Cryptic messaging.
yeah
They're
and
cooking in the
some
kitchen.
tests, right? Yeah, like shit, like I get it as like I as a guy at work, I can appreciate that as like these are some people at work doing their job, but only the difference is like you have like hundreds of thousands of people who are like constantly criticizing and critiquing what you're doing, right? And like that's hard. That's got to be hard, right? Like you're creating a product for a bunch of people who are like, we fucking hate you. Where it's like, oh great, yeah, like I really want to communicate with these people and like make a product that all
I
of them
wonder
love,
why the
right?
dev stopped talking on Twitter. It's curious.
Yeah, yeah, like you're just trying to like make this thing that you enjoy, do your job, and like not receive a death threat because you haven't communicated something, or whatever, right? So it is a tough task, and knowing that there is like an ending at level 60 or whatever, um yeah, I think that's a pretty decent system, right? Where it's like you convert this old content to make it more digestible for a smaller group of people.
And like I said, it's just I'm not saying my idea is right. I do like your idea of like gear upgrades where if you run old content, you get gear tokens, and it's like
Mhm.
maybe you one per like 5 bosses or 10 bosses. So people always want to run old content, and then 10 or 20 of these things let you buy cosmetics or mounts or toys or maybe if you get like 50 of them, you can get a gear piece. There's ways to do things, right? There's so many different avenues to make horizontal progression work. I just haven't seen a game make horizontal progression feel rewarding in 20 years.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. Like, and it depends on the type of player, right? Because there's always going to be the player that wants to like
Min max.
just get better, but exactly right. Um, like I haven't played a lot of RuneScape. Like
Mm-hmm.
I log in and I kill sand crabs. Like that's my idea of like playing RuneScape, just like AFK doing something. But so I can't really speak too well to what they do, but I know they've got like a pretty decent system in terms of like new stuff coming out. That's interesting. Um, I think Blizzard should steal stuff. Like it sounds bad, but that's what they do, and that's what they've done, and that's why they are where they are, right? Like every game they've made, I shouldn't say like every game because I'm sure I'll get checked on it, but like, a lot of things that they do are innovations. They're not creating something brand new. They're taking something that's popular
Dragon
and
playing.
making it. Yeah, do you think that
That's from Guild
wasn't that
Wars.
that's
That
yeah,
he
that's
stole it
taken
from Guild
from
Wars
Guild
2.
Wars, right? And like,
A one for one, effectively.
yeah, and like original World of Warcraft was like way more similar to EverQuest than their initial release. Like the auction house wasn't even a thing because in EverQuest there wasn't an auction house. Everyone met at this tunnel in this desert, and they would trade there. It was like this common area where everyone would just meet and trade, right? So it wasn't until like the public beta where someone took their code and made like a trading app or like add-on, and they're like, okay, well, this is how people are going to play the game, so we're going to make an auction house, right? So yeah, that's kind of what they do, and like everything is an innovation of something. Like that's art, right? You're inspired by something and you kind of take it and you change it and you make it your own, right? So I think at the end of the day, like they have enough sources of like successful products that have kind of gone down that road. I think the obvious one is RuneScape,
Hmm.
and they kind of got to steal some stuff. As
Absolutely.
bad as it sounds.
So that does tie into like the next topic, and this one's kind of like a thing of like old school RuneScape and how it does horizontal progression. It's not based on raids or a bunch of new like endgame 40, 20 people. It's based on personal challenges and personal goals and like things, for example, quest cape, or for example, bosses, or like, for example, fire cape, or the bows, or like all these like weird epic new legendaries, new really hard bosses, mazes, challenges. Do you think the end game in Classic Plus should go down that direction? Or do you think the player base for Classic WoW is very raid focused and distractions like that, for example, retail added delves or stuff like that? Do you think that kind of horizontal content would work? Or do you think it's a whole separate audience and the Classic community would not enjoy it?
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of parallels that people draw between old school RuneScape and a potential Classic Plus, right? Like when you boil it down to they're both MMOs. One is a classic version that's been added upon and has gained popularity, and with the Classic Plus situation, that's what we want, right? So, um, but that's where a lot of the similarities like kind of end, in my opinion, where structurally they're completely different games,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, um, RuneScape is based off of Ultima, and uh, World of Warcraft is based off of EverQuest, right? The skill system is completely different. It's classless. There's all these things that kind of separate the two. Um, so I think with World of Warcraft, and the thing that you mentioned is like, do you think people are more raid focused, right? Do you think that's kind of the thing? Is I think they are because that's all they've had, right? If your two options at endgame are raiding and PvP, well, you're a raider or you're a PvPer, right? But because they haven't been introduced to alternate ways of playing the game, like in RuneScape, you're not going to be one of those things because you can't be one of those things, right? And so I think that's, you know, now this is a completely whole other ballgame because now we're talking about like new ways to play the game, right? So if they can create new ways of playing the game, sure, I think that's definitely something that can happen, right? Whether you have mazes or puzzles or whatever that new content looks like. You can absolutely have like a horizontal progression in a game like that where you're adding new avenues at end game. But yeah, if you're choosing between PvE and PvP and that's your choice, okay, well I guess I'm a raider. And if I'm raiding, then maybe verticality is kind of the only way to do it. But, if I'm given more options for meaningful end game content that isn't just killing stuff, then, you know, right on. Right. So it's
What kind
tough.
of content would you say would work with the classic player base? Now, for example, old school RuneScape has Quest Cape, right? Where you go do every
Mhm.
single quest in the world, so you get Quest Cape. At least I assume that's correct. I have not done Quest Cape myself. Um, So, would something like that be appealing to the classic player base? For example, Ascension Bronzebeard has a system where at the beginning of the game, you tick off a bunch of challenges. Iron Man, hardcore, this and that, like built in challenge modes from the get go. I think it's like
Yeah.
40 or 50 of them, and people can create their own challenges and stuff like that. Do you think people would actually care about that? Or do you think that's a gimmick that wouldn't really work in the long term for the classic player base?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good question. Like, I mean, look at the most perfect example being like hardcore. It's something that was created by the player base and is now implemented into the game. And it's it's almost become like a new standard for like being good, right? Like you look at his name's Ampy, right? The guy who just
Ampy.
did. Yeah. Yeah. So you look at that and it's like he has the flex of like doing Naxxramas with no world buffs and like having 3 deaths in the raid or something like that. Right. So at the end of the day, like people like flexing in MMOs, right? Like whether that's achievements, tabards, like, doing that kind of thing. I think there's definitely room for that. And actually, I think it does encourage a different style of gameplay and experiencing more of the game, kind of like what we talked in earlier, right? Like, are you going to rush to the end game if you're doing a challenge where you have to do every single quest in an area or do every single quest on Eastern Kingdoms or Kalimdor,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, are you doing these things? You can create complementary gameplay that kind of tricks the player into playing slowly and kind of soaking up the world more based off of like a flex that you're going to get at the end of the game, right? Um, so I think it would definitely work because content's content. You can add new zones, new dungeons, new raids. People are going to do them, and then that's that. But creating alternate ways of playing the game and rewarding that behavior is like something that RuneScape's done really well, right? Like I've never done like every quest in Eastern Kingdoms, but if I got a badass tabard, like I'd definitely be more incentivized to, or like a title, right? Like there's a reason that everyone hangs out in Orgrimmar and Stormwind laced out to the gills in tier 3, just because they look badass and they want people to see them, right? And it encourages people to want to play like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you can add like I'm gonna call it a meaningful flex, even though it sounds stupid, but like if you can add
I
like
get
a
it.
meaningful flex to the game, um, a reward doesn't have to be a power level. Like a reward can be something unique that makes you look cool because people like looking cool in games. Like that's why people collect things, right? Like if if that wasn't the case, why do you have 700 different mounts in retail? Because people
That's
like collecting shit and looking cool.
it's true, and that's what I'm saying is like I've been because I said the vertical and horizontal and like end games. The classic player base is very fickle because everybody plays the game differently. For example, in Anniversary, like before Anniversary in original 2019, like you couldn't convince people to do 24. You couldn't convince them to do the rank 14 grind. That wasn't something you could force or pressure people into. Like even the sweatiest people were like, "I'm sweaty as shit. I'm playing 20 hours a day. I'm sleeping 4 hours, caffeine riddled. Life is miserable."
Yeah.
In 2025 with Anniversary, you could AFK in AV. It was only like 200 to 500 hours, which is still an obscene amount of time. But like people will raid log, it's Molten Core. What else are you doing? Go in there and
Yeah.
get your rank 14. And with how the player base plays, do you think that adding this many challenges and content is something that the classic player base is capable of not breaking and ruining the game and experience for themselves? To protect people from themselves. The classic player base is so min-max focused. Like, and I know people say just play in a guild that doesn't do that.
Yeah.
There's not that many guilds like that. And I know there is. But think about
Mhm.
the online discourse, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Discord, your guild. What are people doing? The
FOMO.
sweatiest. The sweatiest thing. Like, if I don't do it now, I'm gonna have to compete for gear. There's so many warriors and this and that. Do you think the classic player base will ruin Classic Plus based on how we play the game? Based on like assuming they add challenges or different kind of horizontal progression, do you think it'll become this thing of like I gotta do or everything, and instead of being like an option of things you can do, it becomes a checklist of things you have to do?
Yeah. Like I want to be nice about it, but like I think Given the opportunity in like the modern age, it's like, yeah, like people will optimize and ruin the game for themselves, right? Like even with SOD, like you had new content and new stuff, but it got to a point where like you needed to have like a WoW resume to apply for like a raid, right? And so I think like players do end up ruining things from themselves, and it's hard to like FOMO is a horrible thing, right? Like you see everyone else rocketing past you, you're watching content, like you're getting hyped up. It's this new thing. It's like the unicorn that you've been waiting for. And so it's hard, right? Like so I think the reality of the situation is just like, yes, some people are definitely going to ruin it for themselves and sour the taste, but I guess it's like what are you trying to get out of the game, right? Like, and I think that's a big thing too. It's like, taking a step back and being like at the end of the day, it's a fucking game, right? Like, it's not your life, right? I mean, that's not, I'm not trying to be mean in saying that, but like, you know, pace yourself to enjoy it like a game because otherwise you're going to play it like a job and it's going to ruin the thing for you, right? So, yeah, I think like you can definitely optimize the game and optimize the fun out of it, but like, that's on you. Like, I guess the good question is like, whose fault is it? If the game comes out and there's lots of content and there's new raids and someone rushes through it, does everything lightning fast, blasts through it at like a rapid pace, like is it your fault for doing that? Or is it the developer's fault for not making enough content? It's kind of a tough call, right? Like,
Which brings up the next question of gatekeeping, in the sense of like putting time gates on how
mhm,
people, when people should be able to do content. What are your
mhm.
thoughts on time gating Classic Plus? For example, solid launch phases.
Yeah.
Do you think that's good? Do you think they should slow things down or speed things up? Do you think they should make it so raid tiers are drug out longer? Do you think they should, like, say, we're releasing this content at this time, so you can do everything else before that, but this new stuff will only come out here? How do you think they should really? Do you think time gating is something that should be done in the future, or do you think it's a redundant old feature that's like more of a retail thing of like keeping you on a treadmill?
Yeah. I think like the level banded phases was kind of a bad idea. Like I like no one wants to be forced to play a certain way. Like if you want to speed through everything and then like say there's nothing to do, that's on you. Like the developers can only do so much like in terms
Mm-hmm.
of like creating that kind of atmosphere for you not to do that. But at the end of the day, like I think level banded phases is bad. I think longer raid tiers is good as long as there is things to do outside of those raid tiers, right? Because you don't want to like fuck log in every week, do MC for 6 months, right? Or like a year or whatever it is. But like if you have things to do outside of that, and that's where like the alternate ways of playing the game comes in, you know, it it becomes a thing, right? Like I think a big thing with kind of this phasing thing is giving people something to look forward to, right? In-game events. Like I did a video talking about like holidays and like events
Mm-hmm.
in game. I think there's like a lot of power in that. Like I think of the Stranglethorn fishing extravaganza. Yeah, that's perfect. Like that's a really cool thing. And you have to make the world feel like a living, breathing world with things that aren't just like go here, kill that, right? With rewards that don't necessarily give you power, but things that you want to collect because they're cool. Like a boat that you can sit in while you fish or just something, right? Like I know Turtle WoW does that with survival, but like different professions that aren't necessarily something that gives you player power, but it's like something meaningful that you enjoy doing that helps maybe like develop a more RP style of gameplay, right? Um, so that's kind of like my opinion on that. I think like
No,
it,
it's
you know,
I do agree to you. I to a degree do think we
mhm.
need time gating for the modern player base, and this is controversial, but I can explain. I don't
Yeah,
think Sod's launch's time gating was great, mainly because it was 8 weeks, and you had endgame raids and this and that, and it was like level 25, then 40, then 50, then 60. But I do think having 4 weeks to get from 1 to 30 or 1 to 40, then 4 weeks to get from 30 to 60 or 40 to 60. And then, once you're at level 60, you get like 2 weeks of, they release like, they keep like one mega dungeon like on lock for 2 weeks once everyone's at 60 and whatever. Then you get 2 weeks of that dungeon, then Molten Core opens. So give or
Yeah.
take 2 to 3 months of people getting to 60 and then being able to dive into the first raid tier. I do think you have to slow the player base down, because if you don't, the casual player base, which is the majority, will start to burn out and quit. Because they will never keep
Sure.
up. The average dad with
Yeah.
his 7 jobs and 49 children and like 17 wives, you know the meme.
Yeah.
But people do typically have 1 or 2 hours a night to play. That's literally all they have.
Yeah.
And if we're being real with how slow classic leveling is, a lot of people will fall behind.
Mm-hmm.
Sword Phase
Yeah.
1 had that huge player count because, yes, there was a lot of alts, but there was
Mhm.
also, it was level 25. It was super easy to raid. I know for a fact I was in at least on several of my alts. I want to say for the entirety of Phase 1, which is 8 weeks, I did at least 17 Black Fathom Deeps that were not logged at all.
Mhm.
So that makes you wonder how big that player count actually was. Was it 700,000 people? 900,000? Because a shit ton of
Yeah.
people did not log. It's Black Fathom Deeps. They didn't see the reason to log it.
No. Well, I think there's two sides of it too, right? Like, I agree completely where there's like, how long does it take to get to the gate, right? Before the gate opens and you're going on to the next thing. And then, yeah, there's like the actual majority of players. And the thing too is like, when you're consuming content and watching like people who do this like professionally, right? Like they play games, they make content, that's their thing. That is like a minority when it comes to like the player base, right? And then you have this overwhelming majority of, and I don't mean this in a rude way, of like normal people. I don't say like, that's like they're not, what I mean when I
Those
say normal
terrible
people,
normies.
normies, but like that's who the game is designed for at the end of the day. And that's who keeps like the population in game afloat, right? It's not the person that rushes, the top 1% that rushes to the end of the game, does everything, and then gets mad about it. Like that's the vocal part, but the actual like majority of people are like the people, I would even fall in that boat. I work full time, I have a family, and I have 2-3 hours a night to game that now I make YouTube videos doing. So I don't even really have time to game anymore. But that's the thing, right? Is you it sucks, right? Because you're trying to appeal to the people who make content so that they're not talking shit about your game and making bad press for the game. You want those people to sing the praises and make the normal people, normies, want to come in and play it, right? But at the same time, you want to also make the game for the normies to be able to enjoy. So it's this kind of yin and yang of the two. Um, so yeah, I agree. Where like time gating is good, and that's the thing. It's an interesting conversation because you look at classic and it is this evergreen thing, right? So it's like you might not like the idea of time gating right away, but like at the same time you want longevity out of your experience, right? So if you don't time gate things properly, it might suck for some people, but you want a game that lasts forever in a sense.
Which is actually really funny, because another side of that argument is difficulty, right? The player
Mm-hmm.
base, the sweaty player base. And there's a saying that sweaty people gatekeep casual people. Then
Yeah.
casual people quit, and sweaty people can't fill their raids anymore.
Yeah.
And it's a
It's
thing
like,
of like, it's the issue with the time gating and the casuals versus the sweaties versus the people that make the content that the casuals consume, but the casuals don't have the time to act upon.
yeah.
So it's this weird conversation, this weird discussion of, if they make the game specifically for casuals, sweaty people run out of content, and the negative bad press and like, fuck this game, it's all dead, everyone's quitting. For example, Mr. Pandaria. I made a video talking about the tragic decline of Mr. Pandaria. Mr. Pandaria probably has about 250, 300,000 active players, give or take, right? Maybe that's a bit too much, maybe I'm being a bit too generous. But a lot of people do other content. They collect things, they do old achievements, they farm old stuff. Look at retail. I think in retail, they said this in an interview one time. I don't remember if it was Holly Longdale, Ian Hazakostas, but like 1/3 of the player base or 1/4 of the player base raids. So all those raid numbers on retail, that's 1/3 or 1/4 of the whole player base. So you look at Classic Plus, it needs a shit ton of other content, but it needs difficult content, it needs casual content, and it needs to be rewarding to both sides of the player base. Because if you focus on one, the other one is going to seethe and cope and quit. WildStar is a great example of that, which is like a side tangent. It was way too hard. People wanted Classic. WildStar was Classic. It was genuinely as shitty as Classic. Like OG Classic, because it launched like it was equivalent to like 1.01 or 1.02. It wasn't equivalent to 1.12 or 1.13. It was ass at launch. And I love WildStar. I love that to the bottom of my heart. But it was a dog shit game on multiple fronts. So between time gating and difficulty and endgame content, like SOD for example, Scarlet Enclave, there was one difficulty mode, and that broke a shit ton of guilds and pugs.
Yeah. It makes it too hard. It's like the idea of like you need small fish for whales to eat, right? And then if small fish leave, the whales leave. It's not the exact same, but it's kind of a similar parallel between the two. And yeah, I completely agree. Like when it comes to raiding, I'm in like the camp of believing that like you should be able to probably do the raid with like a 40 man with like 15 to 20 competent people and like 20 filler people, right? It's kind of like the yin and yang of the thing. Like, because at the end of the day, like the expert players are going to do it regardless, right? You had 3 dudes doing Onyxia. I don't know if you watched that video, but 3 dudes did Onyxia. You know
They
what I
did
mean?
that
So
back in
like,
2021 as well, by the way. They did that back in
yeah,
original, like back before TBC launched. That wasn't even like assaulting. They did that shit back in the day.
yeah, they just raw dogged it. They just went in there and did it. So I think like you can have an experience like that because you kind of need that, right? Like you want to make an experience that like is going to be enjoyable for both parties, right? And you don't want anyone to quit because there's this extreme skill gap between the two. And Classic WoW has always been it's not a hard game. You know what I mean? Like if you want to play a hard version of World of Warcraft, do like high-end mythics in retail. But like classics just like not that, right? And so when it comes to like different difficulties in raids, I think that's a cool idea to explore. I'm not too crazy about like mythic pluses in retail based off of the itemization of the loot. I'm not necessarily like against the idea of different difficulties, but I think it gets to be a slippery slope when like, it would be like it's tough because when I think of World of Warcraft Classic and I think of raids, I think of like, and I might be going off topic here, but I think, the meaningfulness of items, right? Like getting an epic is really important. That's like a big dick thing. Like, oh my God, I got an epic, right? And I think the thing that sours Mythic Pluses for me is like, or I guess just the different tiers of rating, right? It's like, oh, I've got this cool epic, but it's the raid finder version of this epic. It's like it'd be shitty to get like the raid finder version of Ash Condi, but like you need to get the mythic plus Ash Condi, right? It removes kind of like that RPG element of like this is this sought after piece of gear, this legendary sword that exists in the lore of the world, and it devolves it to this like number where it's like that it doesn't have to be Ashkani, it could be anything and it doesn't matter because I'm looking for a high item level. So yeah, like you do need both sides of the fence, and I think there is room for meaningful content for those people who do want to play at that high level without alienating that kind of casual
So
group.
I did have an idea. I'm not sure how you feel about this, but I feel like it should be one standard difficulty, and it should be an option you can click on, which is called heroic rating, and
Mm-hmm.
it's locked at 10, 15, 20 people, and normal rating is the exact same rate, but you can bring up to 40.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do heroic, the bosses aren't harder, you can't bring more people, but the bosses drop more loot.
Mm-hmm.
So you
How
bring
do
less people for more
yeah.
loot, but
Mm-hmm.
it's harder because, everyone needs to perform. So for example,
Yeah.
there's 2 guilds. I'm over here as a content creator leading, the sweats. And then
Mm-hmm.
you're over there leading normal people as the norms. You bring
Yeah.
34 people, and you guys just have more DPS overall, and my raid team is capped at 15 people. Or let's just say 10 people. And everyone needs to perform. No one can straggle because we don't have the extra healer or the extra tank for the extra, like, trash, or the extra DPS to just melt things down. We're sweating by virtue of having to perform at a higher level with the exact same health. So
Yeah.
say the boss has 10 million health. You can bring 35 or 40 people, and yeah, you all suck. But there's 3 extra people or 4 extra people versus the 10 people or 15 people in the heroic mode. What do
Yeah.
you feel about that?
So I think that's a cool idea. The two things that come to mind when I think of that is like, are you um, kind of like hyperinflating the gear acquisition at that point, right? Because it's like if you have those sweaty people who now have the opportunity to clear a raid and get more gear from it, are they gonna reach all of their best in slot way faster and then have a means of like, oh, now I've reached, I've gotten full best in slot in 2 months when it probably should have taken me 4 or 5 months or whatever, right? So are you kind of like rushing that? And then the second side of that is like, you could technically, with those 15 people, still do the raid on normal, and you'd technically be getting more loot because there's less of a distribution, right?
So you're
So
saying
there's
brings so bring
yeah,
16 people instead of 15, and then
and
you're
you're
getting.
rolling,
I mean, you could
yeah,
do that. Again, it gives
yeah,
people the option, is what I'm saying. Because
for
if
sure.
you click heroic mode on, you can't
Hmm.
bring in more people. It's a cap. It's a lock. Like,
Yeah.
the instance is capped at 15 or 10 people.
Mhm.
And or you could just bring 15 or 20 people and have more, and it lets people have flexible raid sizes. It lets the casual
Yeah,
guilds bring 40 people, and yeah, everyone gets less loot, but it doesn't matter if you're ass, you're playing with the boys, you're playing with friends. Or you
for
can be
sure.
like, we're not good enough to be mythic raiding, but we're
Yeah.
heroic raiding, and
Mhm.
we're bringing in 19 people or 20 people, and or
Mhm.
you can be like, not one person can make a mistake, or I'm gonna do the Onyxia raid DKP thing. That one guy
Yeah,
yelling
yeah,
minus
yeah,
DKP.
yeah, yeah, 50 DKB minus.
And it's like there's
Yeah,
10 people and everyone has to perform perfectly. I feel
yeah,
like separating loot into tiers ruins the game.
for sure.
Or, like I said, it's not that you get more loot, there's less
Mhm.
people to share it with, and it's the only passing that matters. Because you
Yeah.
can, on the Warcraft logs, you have heroic passes and regular passes. When 10 people have to pass, it's way more impactful because everyone has to perform way higher versus 40 people. And I feel like that way, it's like, it's more, it's, they don't make it so it's worse for people that are good or worse
Yeah.
for people that are bad. You all get the same amount of loot at the end of the day. Just how many people is your guild bringing?
Yeah. I think it's, to be completely honest, I think it is a good idea and it does help separate things. Like, if anything, like that, the heroic mode should maybe be the only mode that gets tracked in parses and everything. So you're not diminishing the experience for someone, who just wants to do the casual, but then you have a group of people who still want to see parses for a casual raid, where it's like, that's not really the mindset. Like, you're kind of putting the two groups into buckets and you're enabling both to be able to do the thing they want. And I do think like you do need to have a reward, like you said, whether that's more gear. Um, like here's a good question. So when it came to uh, molten core and sod rating,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like they had the different heat levels.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find that like
Hated it.
that? Yeah. And
It
did
was
you
ass.
find? Yeah. So why was it ass in your opinion?
So the reason it was ass was because you needed 315 FR to do heat level 3.
Mhm.
That shit wasn't easy to get. It wasn't cheap. It wasn't smooth. It wasn't efficient. Like, you
Yeah.
were fucking up your hit cap because, like, getting the good gear with the right hit and everything, you had to go farm specific pieces on weird locations to get the right hit. For I was playing a boomkin to get the right amount of hit. For example, the Star of Mysteria from Balnazar, the 1% hit on there. I killed that motherfucker 150 times and I never dropped. So I was gimped
Yeah.
because I couldn't get a hit neck. And I think there was
Mhm.
another one that dropped from a different boss that I also couldn't get. And it was like, and the issue is I needed 315 FR, otherwise you got one, the mechanic killed you. So we did
Yeah.
heat level 2 because half my guild couldn't get the right pieces because it wouldn't drop. It became an RNG check of, were you lucky enough to get the right pieces, the right gear, the right grind. People were like, you should have grinded better. I fucking tried.
Yeah. Yeah. You're bound to like the drops, right? So I
So
guess.
I liked Nax Rammus's difficulty mode, where if you did the 4 thing where everything was much harder, you got more loot. That was cool.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess say with the heat levels, if they did it in a
Mhm.
not shitty way, to put it bluntly, did you find that the heat level rewards were like rewarding enough to incentivize that level of gameplay? Or I guess in a hypothetical, say that you didn't need some stupid set of gear and it was
Mhm.
just harder, but in a different means. Do you think the rewards were warranted or meaningful enough for you to do that? Because it was just like cosmetic stuff, right?
In Molten Core, no, because Heat Level
Mhm.
3 was a pain in the ass, and the IKEA meatball wasn't an exciting 11th boss.
No,
It was whatever.
it's a
Um,
joke.
Whereas in Blackwing Lair, we always did the Black Dragon effect. Always.
Mhm.
It was worth it for that. Because you got more
Yeah.
loot, and then the chest gave the nice cosmetic, and it was a flex with the shiny dragon, the black dragon effect, or the fiery effect, whatever it was. So we
Mhm.
always did that, and I liked Blackwing Lair's effect system, like the difficulty modifier, because like it was never really that bad to take the three things. But in Molten Core,
Mhm.
we did the IKEA meatball once, twice, maybe it was three times, and then we went right back to Heat 2, and we just did Heat 2 the whole time. It just wasn't worth it for my guild to do Heat level 3. It wasn't fun, it wasn't interesting, and the worst part was if one person called out, finding a pug with Heat level 3 gear was a fucking nightmare.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's just such a specific set of things that you need, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's just so I think like moving forward, like it sounds like they've already got like a system that is fairly okay, that needs a bit of reworking, that would kind of suffice in like that idea, right? Like the different tiers,
Mm-hmm.
heat levels, whatever you want to call it. Um, so I think if you implemented a system like that where those extra mechanics don't actually suck, like getting this weird set of heat resist gear, I think you would have a nice middle ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think as much as I personally enjoy like a 40-man raid because I think it's badass going into battle with 40
Mm-hmm.
people, I don't think that 40 people is maybe like the best size just in terms of like you've played the game, you've raided like sometimes it really sucks to put together 40 people.
It
And
does.
no like in orchestrating 40 people to be on at a certain time doing a certain thing is hard. It might have been easier in 2004 when there was less shit going on, and that was like your thing, like doing a 40-man raid.
I
But
think
like
it's
now there's
flex
just so.
rating is the future. If they do Classic Plus with like a set raid team, it can't be more than 20
Mhm.
people. I think it needs to
No,
be flex or 20. Like I think
yeah,
heroic
no,
mode being 10 and then everything after is flex, you can bring from 11 to 40 people. I'm cool with that.
mhm,
Like it should still
yeah,
be like it should be scaled around having 20 people or 25 people, but I think heroic mode should be hard. I think it should be genuinely an achievement. I think it should be equivalent of mythic rating in retail. It shouldn't be accessible because it shouldn't reward better gear. It should be less competition for shiny gear.
yeah.
So you get
No, I
more
completely
gear, it's
agree.
got a nice effect on it.
Hmm.
It's 10 people. Get good or do regular.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And the difference between those two is like not necessarily because you can give two people the same set of gear, and if one person's better at playing the game, they're just going to dominate the other
Mm-hmm.
person regardless of their stats, right? You can even have a
Definitely.
person in full tier one just execute someone in tier two or tier three
Mm-hmm.
who's not that great at the game but has that set of armor, right? So, I think yeah, giving them the opportunity to do that, giving them like a cool flex of a look, knowing that hey, this is a badass dude, I think is definitely like reward enough to, you know, to make those different
Actually,
sets of
I
difficulties.
think the heroic version should be a cooler coloration of the exact same tier. Not better stats, not
Yeah.
better thing. For example, Judgment tier 2, right?
Mhm.
Regular mode Judgment tier 2 is the regular one that we have. The heroic version should have actual golden lighted aura coming out of it. So you look gangster.
Mhm. Yeah,
I feel
yeah.
like you need to make it rewarding in a way that when you're sitting in Orgrimmar, people are like, he's good.
Yeah, yeah.
He's good.
That's the thing. Like you there is like this certain like fantasy of like you being your character and you wanting your character to be badass. And like yeah, like a I picture like a tier 2 judgment set that's like murdered out and it's all black or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just something that just goes hard, right? Um yeah, cuz that the and kind of touching on that, I think making the tier sets better is like really important
Mm-hmm.
because the idea of like the min max, like, oh, I need like this piece of gear in this piece of gear and this piece of gear because doing the calculations, I do 2.4% better DPS with this clown suit of gear compared to like the tier set because like the game was designed where like you get the tier set and that's the shit that you wear because
Hmm.
like it's cohesive, it's a cool look, and it's epic, right? The other stuff is just supposed to be complementary gear until you get that set. I mean, like look at Edge Masters. It's like a level 40 something, 44, 45, like
Hmm.
epic pair of bracers that dominates. Like the game isn't that wasn't intentional by any
I
stretch of the
think honestly,
imagination.
going into Classic Plus, they should just do expertise and and not necessarily remove weapon skills because it's part of Classic, but I think they should
Mhm.
literally make it so you can at level 60 pay 5 or 10 G, make it somewhat pricey, but you can go to like your class trainer and change
Mhm.
your weapon racial to a weapon of your choice. So you can go from sword to mace, or mace to axe, or axe to this. They should make racials, not every racial, like, you should still have your stone skin and this and that, or your berserk, or, your orc stun resist. But they should make it so that there's, like, the weapon racial should be changeable.
Yeah, 100%. Like picking a race shouldn't be a fundamental thing
Mm-hmm.
to your class, right? Like you don't want to pick a night elf warrior and be like, "Oh, look at this fucking guy who's playing a night elf warrior," when you should have gone human or whatever
Mm-hmm.
because you get the sword buff or whatever. It's just like it feels bad.
Mm-hmm.
And no one wants to be forced to play a gnome mage because it's the most optimal way to do it, right? Um, and that just goes in line with like optimizing the fun out of the game, right? Like understanding that you can make races unique in whether that's abilities, even like professions, I'm okay with like the fact that, you know, gnomes get better engineering, right? Something like that makes sense because it's like a race specific thing. But yeah, like you say, you shouldn't be reliant on your visual look, to perform a certain way,
Exactly.
right?
Very well put.
That's
Which,
shit.
which actually, it's actually a good segue into the next topic, PvP, and what that should look like, because PvP is the forgotten, red-headed stepchild of
Yeah.
Classic. It's like, yes, I know in Classic, PvP is balanced because PvE is unbalanced, right? Like, you can be great at PvP and terrible at PvE and vice versa. But Classic Plus has to make the classes not homogenized, but every class viable for PvE, which affects PvP. So how do you fix that without breaking one or the other to make both fun in its own separate way? I have my own ideas, but as the guest, I'm gonna let you answer first on how you think they should address PvP in Classic Plus.
Yeah. So I think like at the end of the day, you want people to want to participate in every system, right? You don't want to
Mm-hmm.
have a bucket of PvP players and a bucket of PvE players. You want to have a bucket of World of Warcraft players, right? And so I think they do a decent enough job of like interchangeable gear. Like I think PvP power is stupid, or like you're getting this set of gear specifically for this thing. I think if you can incentivize people to want to do PvP to get cool gear that would perform well in PvP and vice versa, you're kind of already off to a good race. Um, when it comes to PvP, it's a tough call, right? Because you want classes to feel unique. Like you don't want, I feel like that's the thing with retail is like there's a certain set of abilities that everyone gets, right? And so it kind of like homogenizes things where it's just so, balancing distinction in classes and class fantasy versus like the two is really important. Whether that's like and it's a tough call. You could say like make a PvP spec that people can like dual spec as PvE and PvP, but that's a slippery slope on itself, right? Like then you're kind of creating a bucket. So yeah, it's tough, man. Like I would like to, you know, stroke a brush and it paints over the issue and it fixes it, but um, I think
Controversial versatility, not versatility, but like what they did in TBC, which was the forget the name of it. Where they added the stat resilience. There we go. Versatility,
yeah.
resilience
Mhm.
gear. What do you think about resilience for Classic Plus?
Resilience is an interesting topic because it splits the gear, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you saw someone with resilience gear in a raid, you'd be like, "Get the fuck out of my raid." You know what I mean? Like it's a useless stat so you're kind of like creating this thing that's only useful in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um Fuck, it's tough, man. Like it's like you're trying to solve this problem that I'm sure like a group of 100 people are actively thinking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's like a temporary, like kind of like the leather working armor attachment or armor buff where
Mm-hmm.
you can like increase like the defense of an item or whatever, um, but like a PvP version of that. Because I think when I look at like PvP and PvE and how to fix PvP, I think it really comes from like you want to balance every DPS spec so
Mm-hmm.
that no one's like clobbering someone else. Um, but you've got two types of PvP, right? You have duels and then you have battlegrounds. And so you want to have like complementary classes because you're working together, right? So there
Mm-hmm.
should be a rock, paper, scissors effect in a group setting, but you wouldn't want to have rock beating scissors every time in a duel, right? Like it doesn't work. Um, so, I don't think resilience is a bad idea as long as it doesn't like invalidate the rest of the armor because it has resilience, right?
Okay.
Um, so whether resilience has a dual effect where it does one thing in PvE and one thing in PvP, but is more optimized for PvP, I think that's kind of like a happy balance of both, maybe. Um,
What
but
ab- what about? So I can see the hesitation with resilience because I get the gear splitting. What if
yeah.
in BGs and arenas you were
Mhm.
just flat out given like over your gear? This is called season one PvP gear, season two
Yeah.
PvP gear. You don't get to pick. The devs do it for every class, and you go from there. So the devs can balance and change what your stats and your spec and your agility and stuff is in arenas and BGs by default. So it just becomes a skill thing, not a gear thing. Whereas in the open world, you can get resilience gear. You can buy resilience gear with like, so say let's just say regular arenas like unranked arenas and unranked BGs default gear. And then with the points you earn, you can go buy resilience gear for ranked BGs and ranked arenas and open world PvP.
I think it's a good idea, honestly. Like, I do enjoy the fact that you can get a PvP set, and I do like that progression of like getting points and unlocking that set. Um, I think my mentality is just like how can you help the one crowd want to participate in the other crowd, right? Like, how can you incentivize PvE players to get into PvP, right? So whether that's making like the PvE gear, more viable in PvP, because I think that's one thing, right? Is like you don't want to have someone who's like PvE'd their entire experience and they've got full tier two, but they get wrecked by someone who's ranked through the PvP tree
Mm-hmm.
with their set of gear. You want them to have a smoother transition. Um, so, which, at the end of the day, I don't know if you can really do that effectively. So, I think PvP gear in the way you're describing it isn't a bad way to do it. And it kind of gives you could maybe okay, here
It's
let's
hard.
maybe change let's maybe change the scope of I guess my thought of like trying to merge the worlds together. So say we have the PvP gear in your example.
Mm-hmm.
There is like a progression because PvP tier sets are cool. Like I think of like the Burning Crusade
Mm-hmm.
PvP
That's what
sets.
my mind goes to, just directly to the
They're
Burning Crusade, or
they're
the Wrath ones and Burning Crusade ones.
they're fucking sick.
Mm-hmm.
Like Hunter PvP. Oh, the Demon Stalker.
Mm-hmm.
Or yeah, it's I use that in retail
Mm-hmm.
still. Like it's okay. So what if I guess to bring the worlds together more, you have some kind of like reward from PvP that benefits PvE, whether that's a cosmetic transmog or like you know
Make
s-
PvE
s-
plays want to play, like buying a mount with
exactly.
honor coins or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's like probably a pretty happy medium, which is kind of the direction it goes naturally. Um, But yeah, I don't think it necessarily has to be gear. I suppose it could be, other incentivized tasks.
But how would you balance, like, because the issue is if you balance PvE,
Yeah.
PvP breaks. In SOD was some of the most balanced PvE I've ever seen. I think in SOD, the best DPS was only 5% better than
Mhm.
the mid, and 5%, I think it was 10% better than the worst DPS. That is an insanely low margin. And I know 10% is a very lot at the high level, but for everyone below the highest level, it was smooth. It was very close.
Yeah.
the PvP was dog shit in SOD. PvP was
Yeah.
abjectly terrible. It
Oh, you
was
get
like,
one-shotted by druids.
yeah, it was just like across the board, every phase, it was like a whole
Mhm.
different PvP experience. Oh, what class is about to clap cheeks this time?
Yeah.
So you have the issue of like, if they don't balance PvP separately from PvE, it breaks
Mhm.
PvP.
Yeah.
So it's this issue of like, I'm not saying resilience is perfect, but let's say we remove resilience from the equation. How
Sure.
else could you balance it? What would you think is the best way to balance it?
I mean, I guess you could take like the PvP power concept and apply it to spells, right? Like this spell does, and it doesn't have to be in the text, but it can be like in the background, right? Like this spell does this to NPCs and it does this to PCs, right? So you have the same thing separated where, you're not getting clobbered in PvP because you're using a PvE spec, but you're introducing that idea of PvP power on the spell side of things and the ability side of things, where, you could have the best of both worlds in a sense, where you have PvP power in a sense, but it's
I like that
kind of
actually. So you're saying
formatted
certain
differently.
spells would be way better in PvE versus PvP and vice versa. So you could have a
Yeah.
full rogue build that's terrible in PvE but amazing at PvP. Same for hunter, same for mage. For example, arcane spec could be insane in PvP, or I mean frost could be insane in PvP and arcane and amazing in PvE and vice versa. So you have like the dual spec and you change and pick for different encounter situations, and it's less about the gear and more about your skill because the gear is the
Mhm.
same across the board regardless.
Yeah. Or even like it could even be like frost is fine for both, where it's like, you know how you have like abilities in the
Mhm.
game that do more damage to undead or do more damage to
Yeah.
beasts. It's like that concept, but like does more damage or does X amount of damage to NPCs versus PCs, right? So then I guess, you kind of have a bit of a more of a balance where like if you notice that a spell is like really good in PvE, but really shitty in PvP, you can raise that does more damage to PvP in PvP to bring that kind of like more in line with, how it should perform, right? So then you're
Mhm.
kind of tweaking both sides of the gameplay while not really fucking with the classes too much, right? Just yeah, it's a hard thing to balance, but like that could be a system
They've
that
been
works.
failing for 20 years. So, like, honestly, I
They
don't
have.
think me and you are going to solve it. I just want to hear your thoughts, though, because they
Yeah.
still don't have a good system. I'm going to keep it real. Like, I think Mop had the best PvP
Mhm.
in a long time. Not classic Mop. Classic Mop's PvP is terrible. But I meant, like, Mop originally had amazing
Yeah.
PvP. Based on what I've heard, I didn't play, I skipped Mop. So I don't quote me. It's what everyone else says.
No, yeah, I wasn't too crazy about Mop either.
Um, but that does bring us on towards the end of the show. Was there
Mhm.
anything you wanted to discuss before we closed it out?
Um, I guess like if you had a wish list of concepts or ideas you would like to see introduced in a realistic version of Classic Plus,
Mhm.
what would that look like for you in like not too long of it, just like a TLDR?
Of like what I would like to introduce. Could you give me like an example of like something you're saying? Like,
Yeah, for sure. So like in my dungeon videos, I talk about
uh-huh.
like what they can do to improve, a dungeon. So I look at like Black Fathom Deeps, for example. It's pretty old god themed in the fact that Akumai is like this pet of the
Mhm.
old gods, right? And so I thought it would be like a cool idea to add, a quest chain where you go to the different temples around the world collecting these pieces that are old god quest related, where it starts at like level 15 and carries on through the end of the game, like this epic quest that, takes place across the whole thing. So like for you, is there any like aside from like new zones, new grades,
Okay,
new
I
like the
see.
obvious? Yeah.
So specific to what I want. So like, so you're not asking for like Grim Batol or like the Dark Eye and Highway. You're saying okay. So
Like a concept.
for me in particular, and this is kind of like thing.
Mhm.
I think we need more endgame tracks that have nothing to do with raiding or like PvP or whatever. Like Mythic Plus isn't the best example, right? But like something akin to Mythic Plus for forever growing content. Now,
Yeah.
off the top of my head, Heroic Plus is like a simple answer, but like you're talking about things that just simply only I want, and there is something I want, and this is very thing. It's new races, and in particular, I want trolls to not get fucking shit on for one goddamn expansion. I'm a
You
big
love
troll
trolls
player. I've
then.
been a troll player
Yeah.
since TBC, and well, properly since Cataclysm, because when I first started playing, I picked the Blood Elf, and I had no clue what I was doing back in 2007 as a young kid. But like for me, it's like trolls. I love trolls, but every troll raid, every troll expansion, every troll quest line is about shitting on trolls. Even in BFA, when we had the Zandalari Empire, they literally killed off Rastakan to make his daughter the main character. This is meant to be this immortal god king who was 10,000 years old initially, and they retconned him down to some frail dumbass who's 200 years old who doesn't have these godly powers. Like if you read some of the old lore before they retconned it, Rastakan conquered and like forced all the lore to submit to him. He
Hmm.
was a Giga Chad troll who's not even Zandalari. He
What?
conquered. He was badass, and they just scrapped him and made his daughter Talanji the main character, and she wasn't even that good a character. They butchered him for no reason. So for Classic Plus, I want a new troll raid, a new troll dungeon, a new troll zone, or a quest line, and I want them to not be little bitches. That's like it's very unique to me. I want
Yeah.
trolls to feel cool and powerful.
Well, I don't think it's necessarily unique to you. Like trolls, aren't they like supposed to be one of the oldest races
They
in
are the
the?
oldest race.
Yeah. So there you go. So like they like historically they have like a lot of really important lore, and so I don't think that's like a weird thought to think, right? A troll main city, right? Something cool like
The
that.
Echo
Yeah.
Islands, or give like let the trolls. No, I'm not saying phase
Mhm.
1 or phase 3, but maybe like phase 7, the raid of Jintalor, and after Jintalor's been turned into a raid, make it a horde capital city.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take what you said and like kind of like relate it to like a bigger picture, right? Like so that's very specific to you, but the core concept of it is like rounding off content, right? It's like the gnomes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Gnomergon is like a level. Like,
Finishing Noma, yeah.
are you telling me that we can kill Anixia, but we can't go fucking bring Gnomergon back from the leper gnomes? Like, you know what I mean? So like, it's that idea of like rounding off the content and making everything have more meaning,
Mm-hmm.
equalizing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So no, I completely agree with you. I think that's a really good idea. And trolls are badass, and yeah, they shouldn't be shit on because they're
Exactly.
cool.
I just it really bothers me because I love trolls and I've loved them for so long. It's like when they first announced
Yeah.
BFA and like the Zandalari, I was like, they bring because back in Cataclysm, if you read some of the Cataclysm text for like the trolls were at war with all of the like the Karaji and all of these things, and they were winning. The
Yeah.
trolls were beating the Black Empire, and then the Titans came and were meant to have wiped them out and like pushed them back to the Stone Age, and then whatever. Then the trolls recover again because the trolls had enslaved the elementals because they had enslaved, like I think it was Neptulon and some of the other water elementals. I don't know if they had enslaved every elemental because elementals were the servants of the old gods. And like I was so hyped to see this old troll lore, like Rastakhan, the God King, come out and be Giga Chad, and he was like nothing. It was a fluff.
Yeah.
Everything was like, oh, that's just stories they wrote. That was never real lore. Those tablets you found in Cataclysm archaeology, it's a joke. It wasn't serious lore. Just
Yeah.
troll like superstitions. So like,
And thematically, they're like one of the coolest in my opinion. Like as much as people don't like Sunken Temple, the aesthetic and look of that dungeon, like this
mhm,
cool underwater troll temple, it's fucking sick.
it
Like,
is.
it's a shame that it sucks to run because it's like thematically really cool.
Mhm,
Um, so I guess my like what I would want is more, and I know this might be controversial, but like more epic quest
mhm,
lines. So like I said, where it's like something that spans the entire game, maybe. Because like I don't know, the Anixia quest line kind of sucks to do, but after you're done it, it's like, fuck, that was an adventure. Like that was cool. So I think giving a players to feel adventure, like true adventure, aside from just the journey, is really important. Um, Touching on like different locations around the world to go to, whether that's like go to Black Fathom Deeps as a part of it and then like another temple around the world. I think it incentivizes people to a do content that they don't typically do, like BFD, Sunken Temple, these kinds of things. So it helps revitalize shittier things to do and kind of makes them more desirable. So
mhm,
you're kind of you're fixing things that people don't want to do and giving reason to do them. And it's also meaningful because you're on this like, I picture like Frodo bringing the ring to Mount Doom,
mhm.
right? Like at the beginning he's just like this, hobbit who, But by the end of it, he's like this battle-hardened hobbit that like
Hmm.
went on an adventure. And the same thing with Bilbo, right? It's like in The Hobbit. So I think like giving people those memorable experiences and feeling like they went on an adventure in like a role-playing sense, really helps solidify one, like the experience, into cleaning up things that aren't really fun to do and
Hmm.
making them more, desirable to do. Um, that and then one last little thing is like another like the war effort. Like the war effort is the most epic thing to ever happen in like the history of the goddamn game, right?
Absolutely.
And they've never done something like that again. So I think more things like that where you're bringing everyone
Hmm.
together for this like insane world event. There's a lot of power in that. Like, I guess to
Absolutely.
boil it down, my thoughts, epic things,
Hmm.
more epic things to,
Absolutely.
because
Like,
that's what you remember.
I kind of hope like they do like alternate timelines where Hakar wins, and then you have the
Mhm.
Siege of Stormwind against the Gurubashi Empire, or like
Yeah.
the Siege of Booty Bay. Like, there's so many cool things they could do with the story. It's an alternate. It's classic plus. It shouldn't be based on vanilla. I mean, of retail. It should be
Mhm.
its own separate storyline. Maybe instead of Zul'jin being the enemy, the Blood Elves never joined the Horde. The High Elves are alliance, so to the Horde helping Zul'jin, so we get the Amani as a playable race versus the Alliance getting the High Elves. There's so many cool little things they could do that would be amazing. But hey, we could talk about this for hours, so we'll
Oh,
just
dude.
wrap
Yeah.
that up right here.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, Aaron. Fucking amazing episode.
Yeah.
This was a really cool conversation. Guys, you can find
Oh man,
him
thank you.
everywhere at Aaron Amir. Like I said, like Boromir. Aaron Amir. There'll be a link in the description down below to his YouTube channel and everything else. Any final closing words?
Um, yeah, just thank you so much for having me. This feels like a full circle moment of like watching these podcasts and really enjoying them and then being able to participate in them. So like thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Yeah, for everyone if they want to check me out, it's AARONIMIR. Um, I'll be doing some CRT streams, so like some old school 4x3 streams. So yeah, check it out. And yeah, if that's about it. I don't know. It's like
No,
the
you're
awkward part.
good. No, no, you're
I don't
good.
like shamelessly plugging myself, but like,
Plug yourself. Be shameless.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
perfectly okay.
yeah. No, yeah. Hats off to Evan and the entire classic community. Um, yeah, you guys are all the reason why I got into this and do this. So I appreciate all of you and thank you so much for having me.
That is the most humble outro. Love this man. Seriously, go check him out. It'll be in the description down below. Amazing creator. Deserves your love. You all know who I am. It's my channel. It's The Ebon Show. Thank you all for watching. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace out, everybody.